Great morning, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Thank God for Monday. I'm Brother Greg Cellini of the Franciscan Brothers of Brooklyn in the Office of Mission, Ministry, and Interfaith Dialogue at St. Francis College in beautiful Brooklyn, New York. My great pleasure to be back again with you today. The purpose of our show, Thank God for Monday, is to inspire you, our audience, to take personal responsibility for your professional satisfaction. We want to provide you hope, healing, and peace in these unprecedented, turbulent, uncertain times. Motivate you to search deep inside yourself in the quest for fulfillment. Listeners, it's really up to you as how to utilize the information we provide today. Take full accountability for the decisions you make and a resulting outcome. Now, one of the goals of our show, Thank God for Monday, is to introduce role models of people who take very bold steps in their work lives. This is a very unique time in our workplace and world when passion has never been more important. And as such, we are honored today to have with us a very, very special guest. His name is James B. Rosseau Sr. James, known by many as Trig, is the founder and chief executive officer of the CoreLink Solution, a nonprofit committed to empowering people to reach their potential. The organization delivers learning programs through that brand and faith-based media through the Holy Culture brand, including its reach to literally millions of listeners through Holy Culture Radio on Sirius FM. He is also the author. He's written a very timely book entitled Success on Your Own Terms: 6 Promises to Fire Up Your Passion, Ignite Your Career, and Create an Amazing Life. Great morning and welcome to Thank God for Monday, James.
Great morning to you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
The honor is all ours. Kindly share with the listeners and me from what city and state you are speaking from this morning, please.
From the great state of Pennsylvania, Glen Mills, to be exact.
Oh, not too far from us here in Brooklyn and in South
Yep.
Orange, New Jersey. Certainly, that is terrific. James, sadly, we've only got 30 minutes. We could spend hours talking about you, your amazing life, this incredible book you've written. We're jumping right into the deep end of the pool.
Sounds good.
Talk to us, please, about the mission of your organization and how do you go about delivering that mission, please?
Yeah, our mission is pretty simple: to empower people to reach their potential and revitalize communities in doing so. And we do that through a focus on 4 key areas that I nickname or give the acronym of FAVE, F-A-V as in Victor E, faith, arts, vocation, and education. And we use those 4 verticals to really push forward our mission.
Oh, that's terrific. And a little bit later in the show, we're going to do a deeper dive into Fave, actually. But I have
Okay.
a few questions to ask you before we get there. You do this amazing, amazing work on Holy Culture Radio,
Mm,
Sirius FM.
thank
How
you.
would your listeners describe what they would be hearing, please?
I think they would describe it as a combination of healing, hope, and how-tos, right? I heard you say healing and hope as well. And so I just smiled when you said that. But literally, the music and talk are programmed to do just that, provide some form of healing to people and what they hear, give them hope that Jesus Christ is still Lord and Savior and still on the throne. And they give them how-tos, whether it's in faith, exploring their arts, that other side of their brain, working through their vocation, and then seeking education as a continuum of all those 3 things that I previously mentioned.
That is so wonderful and so selfless of you. Now, it's quite interesting because, as you pointed out, we love to be all about healing. We love to be all about hope as well. And I think I know that's one of the things, or 2 of the things that really resonated when I saw this great
Mm,
book of yours. So
thank
certainly
you.
that there would be great synergy. I don't know about you, and I don't mean to be this negative, but I have a perception our world today needs healing and hope more than it has at any time prior. would you respond to that statement?
I would say absolutely, right? It's hard to find anyone I think that would disagree with that. I think perhaps the reasons why that is the case may be a disagreement point, but that in and of itself, I think, tells the story in that we've been polarized probably more than ever before. We found reasons to walk away from each other as opposed to focusing on how to come together more than ever before. And then beneath that, you could point to all the symptoms and the challenges, right? In terms of isolation that was particularly heightened during the pandemic, right? The social media and how it's created a sense of comparison syndrome. Our youth hopelessness, I'm going to say epidemic, and that we've had more youth than ever before, planned suicides and attempt suicides,
Uh,
right? High school youth. And so you start to look at a number of data points, and I can't help but agree with you tenfold.
it's interesting you mentioned social media because at St. Francis College, where my ministry is, the students lament to me sometimes that they really want to detach from social media because they go on and they see everyone having this amazing life because everybody puts their best on social media.
That's
And
exactly
they
it.
said, gee, what about me? And my life's not perfect.
That's right. And,
Yeah.
and if people can remember that social media often reflects the highlight reels, but that our life is not a straight line, it is squiggly, and that means peaks and valleys. And most people don't post the valley. Sometimes they'll post the peak and mention slightly that they went through a valley, right? But in terms of watching it, it is highlight reels. It's like watching a TV channel and only seeing the 30-second promos of the show you're going to watch, right? They show the best parts.
Thank you. I love that analogy, and I'm going to mention that to the students the next time this subject comes up. Now, you have an amazing, amazing channel, certainly, this Holy Culture Radio. What sets it apart from other Christian listening channels? Because there are a few others out there, please.
Absolutely. Well, it's the first national Christian hip hop station, right? Nationally available on satellite radio. It is the first of its kind in that respect.
Wow.
So, I mean, we could stop there. And so, by being national, making it available to more and more people, we have a huge, as what we would call in the corporate world when I was there, BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And so, our 10-year goal is to reach 50 million people on an annual basis, right? And it wasn't my goal. The
Wow.
Lord literally put it on my heart in prayer time, during my prayer time. One of those goals, Greg, where when the Lord puts it on you, you can't even talk about it for a few days. I didn't know. Like, are you kidding? 50 million. But this was a good first major move forward, right? Having a channel that's available to 68 million listeners. And we've been
Wow.
able to track the few million. And what I think is unique about the channel and Christian hip hop as a genre is it brings forth the fusion of hip hop, which had historically been a genre that pushed against the grain, that brought up social issues, political issues, revolutionary in a sense, and adding the gospel message to that energy, right? And so we've seen, Greg, listeners come in from all different channels on. We assume people were coming from the gospel channel. People came in from the CCM channel. They came in from the Joel Osteen channel. They came in from the Catholic channel, right? We did
Oh,
a
my
survey to see like
goodness.
where the listeners came from. And I think it just points to, again, kind of the rhythm that some people want. And when they hear the substantive message in it, it's like, hey, wait a minute, this is it's kind of cool. And then you add the talk shows. We have 18 shows, and some of the shows are mixes, some of the shows are talk shows. And so, for example, on a Sunday, you'll get the Christ Revolution show you'll get Church on the Block, hosted by Pastor Phil out of Chicago at 10 a.m. Then you get a mix show, Christ Revolution mix show at noon. Then at 2 p.m., you get another mix show. And then at 4 p.m., you get a gentleman who talks about music and kind of how you curate it and what you might be looking for. Then at 6 o'clock, you get a show called King Talks, which is Chris Broussard's organization focused on helping men become the best they can be in Christ. And then we end out the day at 8 o'clock on Sunday with a show called Track Stars, where they talk about what's happening in culture and how you as a Christian and stay involved in that culture, right? And so the program is thoughtful, and hey, listen, we're still learning. Let me say that we are still learning.
Oh, that it sounds absolutely amazing. And it's quite interesting because it wasn't but a couple years ago that I was introduced to Christian hip hop. But
Mm.
for our listeners who might not be familiar with it, I have to say, when I first heard the term Christian hip hop, I thought it was an oxymoron. Share more. What is Christian hip hop?
Great. Well, it's funny. Most people say that too. It's an oxymoron. Christian hip hop simply is rap over beats, hip hop beats, but that are communicating the gospel, right? And so if you believe in, the
Oh,
Great Commission, go ye therefore baptizing all nations in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is a mechanism to do that. And I say this to people when you want to think about how to kind of frame it. Imagine a bunch of us jumping on a plane and going over to France and landing in a part of France where no one speaks English at all. And no matter how we turn up the decibels and scream English louder, they're not going to get it.
sure.
They're not going to get it, and they may not be receptive to it, and they may not even want to slow down and use like a Google Translate app. What Christian hip hop does is make it communicatable immediately to people that oftentimes we would not reach. They may be the unchurched. They may be church, but totally bored. Like, the people I'm talking about. You're in church, but you're not really paying
Sure.
attention, right? Because it just sounds like mumble. Like, remember we used to watch the Peanuts and Charlie Brown, and the teacher would talk, and all you hear is womp womp womp, right? Hip hop turns the womp 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 into an audible, digestible form.
Wow. Oh, that's wonderful. Certainly. I'm intrigued. I'm sure our listeners are as well. Did you start this recently? Was this a few years back? Share a little bit more, please, about the beginning, the whole
Sure. So
genesis of this place.
so back in the 90s, after I got saved and believed I was, sanctified, so on and so forth, I was challenged a bit. And I was still producing secular music in the Philadelphia area. And I had the good fortune of running into someone who challenged me in a healthy way and said, wow, you do some nice stuff. It's just a shame it's not for the Lord. And I'm like, what do you mean? And it
Wow.
convicted me to stop producing secular music and go over into Christian hip hop. And I started spending time with them, being lightly discipled by them, hanging out with them. There's a group called the Cross Movement. And so this is early 90s. And from there, I just stuck with it, Greg. I developed a passion for it. I saw the ability to change lives, right? Because I was a guy who maybe I didn't read the Bible the way some other folks did at my early 20s, but then these literally scriptures over beats in some cases, helping me understand like great commandment, the great commission, etc., helping me understand how Jesus fulfilled the scriptures, helping me understand what Holy Week really meant, all these different things that
Oh,
the
wow.
preacher said them before, they just didn't land the same way, right? And now I'm hearing it in the song and I'm rapping it back, and yeah, this works. And so I stuck with that, started producing Christian hip hop, did a radio show, met the gentleman. I had a company called Core Link. He had Holy Culture. He had founded it in 2003. We became good friends. He asked me to bring my radio show over. One thing led to another. I became a partner. Over time, he left the company, so I succeeded as CEO and owner. And the
Wow.
rest, as they say, is history, right?
Oh, what an amazing, amazing story. No question about it. I agree, certainly, that it's very important to have faith oriented options for
Mm.
listening to music. Talk a little bit more, please, James, about why it's so important to have these faith oriented options for listening to
I,
music.
I think music is a soundtrack to our lives, whether we want to fully admit it or not, or whether we're conscious to it or unconscious, right? Many times when we reflect on different things, we literally sometimes hear a soundtrack in our minds, right? We have an expectation if we're walking the beach, what the sound may be. We have an expectation driving a car, what we want our car sound to be. We surround ourselves
Oh,
with audio a lot. And so then the question you have to ask yourself, just like if you want to lose weight, I remember working with a guy at our gyms at Chase when I worked at Chase. He said, the biggest thing I tell people when they come to the fitness center is it's less about how much you're going to work out. It's more about what you put in your body. If I get you to stop putting the wrong stuff in your body, you're going to lose weight. There's no two ways about it. That's more impactful than your workout. Okay. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we putting into our body in an audible way? What
wow.
are we feeding ourselves?
Oh my goodness gracious. The light bulb just went on, and our thank God for Monday listeners know that I love the radio. Certainly hosting this
Mm,
show is so much fun and rewarding for me. but in general, I love the radio. But I never gave a second thought. What am I listening to on the radio? Boy, these are powerful questions, James.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing these with us today. No
absolutely.
question about that. Now, it's apparent to me you love, love, love being involved with Holy Culture Radio. What are some of the favorite parts, the aspects that you love so much?
I love helping leaders, artists, and I often call artists urban missionaries. I love helping them figure out how to broaden their platform and us being a part of that. When I think about the music industry, as it were, many times you are not afforded the opportunity to get your voice out on a broader platform, right? Like, so let's go pre-social. Pre-social, unless you were on a big record label, it was really hard to get
Oh,
yourself heard somewhere, right? Now in 2024, same still exists. However, social has uh made it more accessible to create an audience. But
okay.
again, those who break through and have major success are still far and few in between data wise, right? It's like when you talk to kids who play neighborhood football and then they go into the league in the city, and you have to be honest with, like, only a tight percentage make it to the NFL. Right?
Exactly.
And so for me, it is trying to better democratize access to platforming, access to getting into households. We still have to be tight with our programming and do enough that the audience gets a sense of, repetition works in radio, right? People want to hear their song, but how do we constantly introduce more voices who it's not about the promoter they paid, it's not about being on a big record label, right? It's not that, they've have a 50 city tour lined up yet. It could just be that they've got a message that the Lord put on their heart, and that message can bless someone, right? And
Oh,
can we share them and help them? That's probably the thing I love. And obviously the other part I love is connecting people to the kingdom. Our topmost metric is who hit us to get saved or who hit us to get reconnected to the church community. We tell everyone at least once an hour, text holy to 21346, right? And when you do that, we have people who will get you connected to a local well-balanced church who will pray for you,
oh,
etc. That's the topmost metric, right?
that's
And
so
so
great.
that I love that.
Hmm. You talked a little bit earlier about FAVE, FAVE, on the Holy Culture website. Can you share a little bit more about this, please? Peel the onion for the listeners in me, please,
Yeah,
James.
absolutely. So FAVE again is an acronym that stands for Faith, Arts, Vocation, and Education. And we put it together in our manifesto, I want to say about 2.5 years ago, because when we were doing some early work, I was doing some early work and taking my book and turning it into a curriculum and going out to schools and such. One of the things that was apparent to me in talking to people who spend a lot of time working with children is, listen, it's great that you want to reach their faith walk, so on and so forth, right? And it's great that you want to even help them become better educated by using your book, so on and so forth. But holistically addressing people has to happen. And so we started
Oh,
thinking about, okay, well, how do we be holistic, but yet within like our gifts and talents, like, right? And so Fave immediately like presented itself because we have the Corling Solution side that talks constantly about vocation and how you continue to matriculate in education, and we have the Holy Culture side. And so it was natural to bring them together and approach it from a perspective of no matter which way you enter this house, if you come in the back door, at some point we're going to bring you to the living room. If you come in the front door, at some point we're going to take you back to the kitchen, right? You are going to get faith, because if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, you are placing your faith somewhere. And so we want to challenge you with where you're placing your faith. Arts is important because we are left brain and right brain people, and God
yes.
gives you some form of art, you should use it. Vocation, simply man don't work, man don't eat. So we just talk about how no matter where you're starting from, you can plot a course the way you want to go. And again, education, just to encourage people to be lifetime learners. We never stop learning. And in your faith, in your art, in your vocation, you need to be constantly educating yourself.
Oh, all wonderful, wonderful tips for the listeners and me today. Now, way back in 2008, I was a novice as a Franciscan Brother of Brooklyn, and I had the great fortune of being with a novice director. And
Mm.
the favorite saying he would say to me when I did something that was kind of silly or he didn't understand, what were you thinking?
Mm.
I've got to ask you, James, if you don't mind, what the heck were you thinking? You left a corporate America. You were in the C-suite making all this wonderful money and had all this influence and power. What were you thinking? What motivated you to do such, please, James?
Yeah, it's difficult. And role here's what comes down for me. Roles and positions are seasonal, but your position,
Oh,
your purpose is permanent and eternal. Right? We all
wow.
have the purpose of creating disciples, sharing Jesus Christ, and then we have different assignments, right? And so being in corporate was an assignment for a while. It was to help unlock doors for some people, remove glass ceilings for some people, help some
Nice.
people avoid what we call the glass cliff, right? Where you get put in a
Mm,
position and then you just fail utterly because of a myriad of reasons. And during my continued graduation, I felt the Lord saying to me, "You've done an awesome job here. Now it's time for you to go back from whence you came and really do some work there." Right. And it was tough. I'd be lying to say it wasn't difficult. I was in a C-suite role. I was running at one point about 50% of the company's overall sales. Yeah, having a great time.
wow.
But I felt the Lord tugging and had been tugging at my heart for years, and then created the opportunity for me to exit and do it full time.
Yeah.
And the one thing I would encourage your listeners to understand is when the Lord gives you a vision, he gives it to you. He may confirm with somebody close to you, but he doesn't give it to a board of people. He gives it to you. So be
Wow.
careful looking for others to approve what God has called you to do.
Oh, that is so absolutely beautiful. And as you say, it was not easy to make this transition. For anyone out there, our listeners and me, maybe who are thinking of making this transition, do you want to share one or two things that were most difficult for you in making that transition from corporate America to running your own nonprofit?
One is just the financial well-being of your family and thinking about, how this will change how you operate as a family, how you operate your home, what you may be able to do and not do going forward, what adjustments you may need to make, right? When you make a change like this, you need to think to yourself, I am going to give up some things, right? But I'm giving them up to go up. Okay. And so it's almost
Wow.
like what am I willing to shed in order to move forward with the Lord? Right. And it took me a minute to get to that mindset. That was not overnight. I think the second thing is with roles and positions, we get used to the things that come with that, administrative assistant, access to certain things, right? And you know,
Oh, wow.
just the
Sure.
whole rat race, if you will, right? Even not monetary or physical things, even the momentum of all those things, right? And being and shifting to being able to slow down, being more prayerful about the work, right? Being more intentional about what God wants out of the work and whatnot. Those are adjustments. When you're used to
Wow.
getting up 4 o'clock, working out, being at your desk maybe about 7 o'clock, and then blah, 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 right? And if
Exactly.
you're depending on the corporate environment you're in, scorecarding everything. I mean,
Oh, my
just
goodness.
it's that thing, it's that machine. And so coming out of the machine
It's
is a
interesting.
challenge.
I was in, as the listeners know, in big pharmaceuticals for 29 years.
Yeah,
And so the scorecarding, and I was not at a high level at all, but I was at a point where in a position in finance and then in human resource where I would see these things going on and I could really empathize with what you're
yes.
talking about. Now, you were at a much higher level, certainly, but it's fascinating because I sense that your life has become much more contemplative, that prayer has become a bigger part of your life. There's more time to be a contemplative in action. Certainly. Do I perceive correctly, James, on
You
that?
perceive correctly. And what's beautiful about it, Greg, is I've conditioned myself to spend the first half hour or whatever of my day in prayer and the Bible app, going through my devotionals and working out after that and doing all these things before I let anything else into my day. That
Oh,
is so key. No social, no emails, no anything until I have that first hour and a half, 2 hours to me. And again, prayer, devotional, meditation, if I want to, working out, right? And
uh,
just communing with the Lord. And then until I get in my car, I may not look at anything, right? I
oh,
don't want to
that's
hear
awesome.
anything. I don't want to take anything in.
That is such a great, great tip and advice for me, the listeners as well. That
Yeah,
early morning period, make it quiet, give it to the Lord, and to move forward from there. It must set the tone for the entire day. For
absolutely.
sure, no doubt about that. Now, sadly, time is short. It seems like we could talk for hours, We've only got about 5 minutes, but I do want to ask a couple more important questions. Let's shift gears.
Sure.
We got to talk a little bit about this great book of yours, certainly.
Thank you.
Success on Your Own Terms, 6 promises to fire up your passion, ignite your career, create an amazing life. What motivated you now to write this great book, James?
I was mentoring a lot of people at JP Morgan Chase. I was still there. I was still one of the few African American senior vice presidents in the Delaware area. I think it was 4 of us out of the thousands of
Wow.
people. And
Oh
so
my
you
God.
amass a lot of mentees, Greg. And in mentoring, I got to a thing where it's like, man, I want to make sure I'm consistent in what I'm giving out in terms of advice and whatnot. And then I moved to some group mentoring. So I'm taking these copious notes. Long story short, these copious notes, after sharing them with a few friends who introduced me to a book coach and then an agent, the agent said, this is a book, and took it to a couple publishers, and the publishers wanted to do the book, right? Now, you're never, what you think is done when they say, let's do the deal, you're not done at all, okay? It's a rough manuscript at that point, right? And so we went through the process, but the idea was, how do I take some of the lessons I've learned and turn it into something that's usable in a very practical way?
Oh, that is wonderful. Now, I'd like to whet the appetite of the listeners because the last question I'm going to ask is going to be the most important. Where can they find this great book? Do you want to share very briefly in the 4 minutes we have, maybe just a little bit about these 6 promises to
I'll
fire
talk
up
through.
your passion?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll talk through a couple of them, right? The first
That'd be
is,
great. Thank you.
yeah, the first is about your passion, right? And how you tap into your passion and purpose. And actually, probably, I want to say 30% or so of the book is about that, right? My story, but understanding how you look at your talents and gifts, how you look at the composite of what they look like together, and maybe a couple other questions that I asked on that. But how do you embrace your passion, right? How do you fully embrace it and understand that
Wow.
that and creating income do not have to be mutually exclusive? They also don't have to be in the same line, but it's your choice. You can think about it. I always say passion fuels you. So do it anytime, sometime, part-time, right? But if it gives you that fuel, and it will, you'll find. I used to love watching Greg Louganis in the Olympics, and it always amazed me how he could do a triple somersault something and hit the pool with almost zero splash, and it just looks so effortless. And so I always tell
Yes.
folks to think about, what is it that you do and don't expend a lot of effort and do well, and just imagine what you do if you added some effort to it.
Wow.
That is the way to think about that. The second thing I talk about is parlaying your platform. Oftentimes we say to ourselves, when I get here, then I'll do this. And the amazing thing is, you have people looking at you who already think you are there. No matter where we sit, what
Ah.
position we're in, what seat we're in, there's somebody saying, man, I wish I had that show Greg had. And Greg may be saying, I wish I was on iHeartRadio, right? but somebody, a lot of people are saying, I wish I
I
had the show Greg had,
never would have thought of that. Wow.
right? And so there's always someone looking at us. And so parlay that platform. What do you have access to that you may not be thinking about? What are some of the things you've achieved you may not be thinking about? What are some of the barriers you overcome? Write them down. There's power in writing those things down and looking at your platform and going, okay, great. Now I can parlay this. I made these contacts here when I overcame these barriers. Let me go back to some of those contacts to help me with the next place I'm trying to go to, right? You look at the skills you attained, etc. I'll end on this one.
Please.
The fifth step is put it into action. So a lot of times we can stay in the laboratory of our minds, and in that put it in the action section, I ask you to really build your first kind of 12-week plan of the things you are going to commit to do to move forward on this, right? You've inventoried your gifts and talents, you started to form some passion, purpose statements, you've learned how to parlay your platform a bit. I talk about networking and the importance of who's in your network and how you naturally build relationships,
Beautiful.
right? Now you got to put it into action.
Wow. Question about that. Jane, we've saved the most important question for last. Where can our loyal listeners purchase Success on Your Own Terms? How can they best follow you, please?
Absolutely. They can purchase it on Amazon or a Barnes and Noble online, all those great places you normally buy your books. You can get the paperback version, or you can get the Audible version if you want to just listen to it while you drive. Best way to reach out to me is easy. James Rosseau, that's ROSSEAU at thecorelinkSolution.com. You can follow me on any social, same thing, James Rosseau Senior, James Rosseau SR at the end.
Terrific. Listeners, no excuse. This book is all over the place in various forms. We have a great Franciscan with us today. He could have held on all this good inside of himself. No, what did he do? He shared his greatness. Now it's up to you. Buy one copy for yourself. This makes a great gift. We're in the month of April already. This makes a great graduation gift. Someone's in high school graduation, college graduation. Indeed, now it's your turn. Share the greatness here. This is the book, and as you know, I'm a lousy reader. I could read this so easily, and it was motivating to me. I said, I've got to get James on the show with us today. He shared a lot of nuggets already. Buy the book, please. Give the book. Really, this is a book that can transform yourself and the world. James Rosseau, we can't thank you enough for coming on Thank God for Monday today. Yes, you've enlightened us much more. You've inspired us. I know I'm revved up and ready to go. I'm sure our listeners are now. Continued success, joy, contribution. Really, thank you again for coming on the show, and all the best as you continue 2024 and beyond with all your great work.
Thank you for having me, Greg. God bless.
God bless you. Now, listeners, we're just out of time. Brother Greg saying our hope and prayer is that when you wake up on Monday morning, just like James does, you'll say, thank God for Monday. Until next week's episode, have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.